Good afternoon. This is Dr. Cuffy, and this is also Module 4 for Week 4, our Thursday video recording. This will be the last recording for this week, and as I had explained to you earlier in one of our first recordings, next week we're only going to have one recording because Thursday is Thanksgiving. So, with that in mind, let's continue and finish our Unit 2 as we focus on Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is on anxiety, technology, and other communication obstacles. So something to really think about is that communication barriers are like roadblocks, especially when it comes to communicating in the workforce. They bring communication to a complete halt. Communication obstacles are more like potholes. They can cause uncomfortable bumps and jars, but with patience and training, you can learn to avoid them. So hopefully after we complete this chapter, you will definitely learn some key points in how to avoid a lot of these communication obstacles and how to prevent some of the barriers that happen. First, let's look at anxiety as a communication obstacle. Definitely, anxiety can definitely be an obstacle when it comes to communicating. So let's talk about the types of anxiety that can cause communication obstacles. The first kind is something called communicator anxiety. And that can happen when we are perceived as less confident, or you can have communication anxiety and a lot of times you are less likely to be offered an interview. You can make a poor impression in an interview. Sometimes you even hold lower statuses or lower paying jobs because of the fact that you have such great and vast communicator anxiety. And you also experience less job satisfaction because of the fact that you have this anxiety. It's like you just don't know what to say, how to say it, when to say it. So what causes that type of anxiety when it comes to communicator anxiety? It can be because of some key factors, such as you're just not prepared, which is the number one cause. If you don't practice, if you're not prepared, if you just go at it just gung-ho, a lot of times you're going to mess it up. So you need to be really prepared. Like if you go on that job interview, or if you have to make a presentation at work, or even if you have to make a presentation in this course, you need to be prepared. You need to practice. You need to prepare. You need to practice. You need to prepare. I know I'm saying this a lot, but this is true. You need to practice and you need to be prepared. And sometimes, what can cause it is because it's a new or different situation. Something, something that you're not familiar with. Like say your boss tells you all of a sudden, I need you to go out and give a small presentation to the crew about the new pens that we're going to be using. And you're like, boss, I've used a pen one time and I'm not even sure how to use it. And you're like, oh, don't worry about it. You can do it. Just go out there and do it. Because it's something that's new and different and it's a situation that you've never been thrown into. You might have a lot of anxiety. And also it could come from having a negative experience. Perhaps you gave your first speech and you actually may have thrown up or something. And so you already have this negative thought about what's going to happen if I have to give a presentation. So those are a lot of things that cause the anxiety. So now how can we reduce that anxiety? or to train your butterflies, as they're so called. And you can also look in your textbook, and you can follow some more steps that are available for you on table 6.1. But I'm going to go over just a few of them. And one of them is to have a relaxation with deep breathing. Like we learn how to breathe, how to control our breathing. And it actually helps to relax you. Also, you can do cognitive reconstruction or self-talk. You talk to yourself, basically, and you tell yourself, I'm going to be successful. I got this. I got this. It's going to be all right. They all like me. It's going to be okay. And then, of course, using this course as a great reference point, you gain skills, just like what you're going to be gaining from taking this course. You're going to learn how to communicate effectively in the workforce. So, those are a few very key points that can help you to reduce your communicator anxiety. So let's go on to another type of communication anxiety, or another type of anxiety, which is called situational anxiety. And that is when the anxiety is caused by factors present in a specific speaking situation. Like, for instance, you're feeling nervous before a new communication event. That's normal. The body sends like all this nervous attention and you become afraid or excited. You have that adrenaline rush. And, you can, because of that situation, feel very anxious. So how do we manage situational anxiety? Like I was telling you before, we prepare and we do what? We practice. Try doing warm-ups. Try practicing in the mirror before you have to give your presentation. Engage your friends or your pets to be your audience and practice in front of them. Like I was saying, you could use deep breathing exercises or relaxation techniques and concentrate on the meaning. Use visual aids. Use a wonderful thing called positive imagery. Did you know that the only difference between the pros that seem like they really have it together and the novices is that the pros have trained their butterflies to fly in formation? That's a quote by Edward Morrow. And he said that that's the only difference between us, who may be just novice presentators, against someone who is a pro, is that they just simply have taught their butterflies to fly in formation. They just seem like they really have it together. But believe me, everyone experiences in some way, shape, or form those butterflies. We just got to learn how to train them to fly better. There's another type of anxiety that we're going to go over, and it's called trait anxiety. That is when internal anxiety an individual brings to the speaking situation. Like, in other words, it's something that's internal. It's not necessarily like the situation in and of itself. It's something that could be genetically predisposed, or something that is something related to something that has happened before. So, how do we manage trait anxiety? A lot of the same ways we kind of handle situational anxiety, but more to a deeper level. We can use positive imagery, which we're going to go over shortly. You can use your imagination. You can see yourself as a speaker you want to be. You just simply say, I can do it, and you picture in your mind yourself doing it. Remember words and vivid mental pictures plus feelings equals confidence. Read a positive imagery exercise, or write your own. Look on page 168 in your textbook, and you can see exactly how to write your own positive imagery. See, what we have to do is we have to act as a person we see ourselves to be. Like, you have to see yourself as this great and wonderful speaker, and you get up and wow the crowd, and the crowd is giving you a standing ovation. That's how you have to see yourself. You don't see yourself as someone that goes up there and blubbers and then everybody laughs at you. You see yourself in the positive way. Here are some samples of positive statements. I feel as relaxed and confident giving a formal speech as I do entertaining good friends in my own living room. That's a positive statement, because basically we have to look at our audience as just an extended group of people that are your friends. You could also say, I enjoy giving presentations regardless of the size of the audience. So you don't go at it as if you're tackling something that you could, quote unquote, never do. You look at it like, regardless of the size of the audience, I can give a great presentation. You can also say something like, I am a warm, relaxed, and entertaining speaker. When I'm in front of a group, words flow easily for me. People respond well to my presentations. Anxiety, which is a form of excitement, is a good thing because it gives me extra energy and power as a speaker. That's when I was saying that we have to be able to train our butterflies to just fly in a formation. It's not that we won't have them. It's just how we train them to go. So we use that extra excitement, those butterflies, as extra energy and a power so that you are a wonderful speaker. And I'm sure I'm going to see that in every one of you when it comes time for our presentation in the last week of class. So another obstacle in communication is technology. People may say, oh no, technology is our friend. Yes, in some ways technology is our friend. But in a lot of ways, when it comes to the workforce, technology can be a communication obstacle. How, you ask? Well, let me show you. Social media is definitely an obstacle, or can be an obstacle in the workforce. So to keep social media from becoming an obstacle, you would need to, how would you react and say these things in your mind before you post, before you put anything on social media? Imagine in your mind saying, if I was an employer, how would I react to post on my social media sites? That's a very good question to ask. Or how would my mom react if she saw this on my social media site, or my best friend? So what should I remove, if anything? You have to be aware of those types of things. So why do you think employers care so much about what is posted on social media? They care a lot because you represent them. Even when you're not at work, you are still representing them, or your boss, or your company, or whomever you are tied to. So look on page 172 for what to remove from your social media sites. It has a great list, and it shows a lot of things that you should definitely think twice about before you put up. And perhaps if you've already put them up, what you should think only once about when it comes to removing them. So let's move on to something else that technology related that can be a very big obstacle when it comes to the workforce. Those things are emails, IMs, blogs. Those are all things that can be an obstacle when it comes to communication in the workforce. So there's some disadvantages to emails, even though email is a wonderful, wonderful thing to use at work, but it can also be a very disadvantage. And so can instant messaging and blogs be a disadvantage. So it is legal for your employer to inspect their employees' emails. So say you use your email, your work email, for personal reasons also. And say you send something that you consider quote unquote funny, and you send it to your friend, and you got more of a reaction than you wanted to, but it was just something that was just quote unquote funny. But then your boss said that, now it's time for us to do like our little dig or inspection of your email server. And they find all these things that you have sent by email, and wow, then you get reprimanded. So you have to understand that regardless of what you send, a copy is being made on your computer that you can't erase. Also, senders seldom proofread for content or tone. Have you ever wrote an email, and now that we have this wonderful mechanism called autocorrect, which I don't think they're really my friend. You can write something and then it says, no, you possibly couldn't mean that. So let me autocorrect it for you and make it be this word. And it's not the word that you want to say at all. And then you push send without even bothering to proofread it. And the person that receives your message is appalled because instead of calling their little baby Dreamy, you called your little baby Droopy. And so now they're crying hysterically, and you're going, what is wrong? So my baby's Droopy? No, Dreamy. Oh my God, autocorrect. I didn't even bother to proofread. So there's a lot of problems that can cause from emails and IMs and blogs when you seldom proofread. And sometimes people get your email, IM, or blog, and they are angry very clearly, and then you have a big mess to try to have to clean up. So we got to remember when we send out emails, especially when it comes to place at work, you have to be very, very critical about what the tone is of the email, because there can be a lot of misinterpretation. Maybe perhaps you say people are just too sensitive, but that's not the point. The point is that you have to be constantly aware of taking your responsibility for that message that's leaving from your server going into someone else's. So let's just be critically aware of those types of things that can cause a lot of disadvantages when it comes to the workplace and all kinds of communication obstacles. Lastly, a communication obstacle when it comes to part of technology is video conferencing. So video conferencing is a good thing, especially when it comes to the fact that maybe perhaps you have a colleague who is, when it comes, well, I'm teaching, so maybe perhaps I have a colleague who's on sabbatical and we want them desperately to be in on this meeting. So we video conference them in their home environment. So a lot of times it's good because you can bring everyone together. But then you have to realize that a lot of times what happens in video conferences is there is a lot less emotions. And then it can also be a lot less conflict. And participation is more organized because we can make sure that we know that we're bringing them in. And user participation is more equal, but it can be less satisfying than face-to-face. Even though it's a very, very good tool to have and a very good tool to utilize, you have to understand that a lot of times there is that lack of satisfaction because it's not like a face-to-face, like where you can actually talk to someone and see their reaction or ask for their immediate response or whatever. So there's always pros and cons and disadvantages and advantages to all kinds of forms of technology. And then also understanding that even though there's a lot of good things about technology, because the world is thriving on technology now, that there's also ways that technology can become an obstacle in the workforce. Moving on, we want to talk about some other communication obstacles. Okay, we've talked about anxiety as far as like speaking, what types of communication obstacles there are when it comes to situational and trait and communicator anxiety. And we've talked about various obstacles when it comes to technology. But now we're going to talk about other obstacles that can happen as far as communicating in the workplace. One of them is something called vague instructions. Vague instructions are weaknesses that can occur in almost any organization, and it does. It occurs in many organizations. But people who give effective instruction usually follow these basic rules. They begin with an overall picture. They use minimum words. They use good delivery. They make words specific and easy to understand. They use a number of signposts and objects and steps. If you follow these steps, you will be able to understand what it is that you are supposed to be doing. They use simple comparison, and they use a lot of repetition. And they always end with a summary. So that's what we want to strive for. So that way there's not that weakness in our organization. We have to use very specific instructions, not vague ones, so that no one has any idea of what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So that's very important, and that can be a great obstacle, vague instructions. We don't want them. Another one that we can have is something called jumping to conclusions. That is when your inference and your observation is confused. It is a failure to distinguish between first-hand observation and what is inferred or assumed. You see this, and then you make this conclusion that, aha, that must be what you're talking about. It especially happens when there's short messages in your instant message system, and social media tends to lead to jumping to conclusions quite often because the messages are maybe perhaps too short, and the people tend to believe, oh my goodness, what is going on? And then also problems can occur if you are unaware you made inferences and assumptions. And people assume that they are indeed true facts. So then what do? They jump to conclusions. So you can see how this can be a problem too. You don't want your fellow coworkers to jump to conclusions. You want them to be learned, and you want to lead them in the direction that you really truly want to by being more specific and giving more information. Lastly is something called bypassing. And it occurs when people assume that a word, maybe just one word, has the same meaning for everyone. But that's not true. Managers and employees often have different meanings for the same words. For instance, a manager can say, I'm taking a break. And an employee can say, well, I'm taking a break. A manager might mean I'm taking a break as in I'm leaving for a whole month. An employee cannot have that particular option. When they say I'm taking a break, it means that they're going for their 15-minute break, and that's it. And you better be back after your 15 minutes. So you can see how one word can have a various when it comes, can vary very differently when it comes to who is saying it. So also vague phrases, there's that word again, vague, are sure to have different meanings for different people. Definitely. Because you might be vague to me, but I totally understand what you're saying. But someone else is completely clueless. So vague phrases are definitely a way to lead to bypassing, because people are going to just bypass what the true meaning is and go by that vague phrase and just go ahead. And cultural differences definitely can cause bypassing, especially when it comes to a global firm, because definitely the word that I might mean is nothing compared to what the word is truly meaning. I had a friend who was from Africa, and they told me that learning English was the hardest thing that they ever did in their life, because of the fact that words that we have for things, they didn't understand them. Like, they had met someone who said that I got to go see my pop, and they were thinking to themselves, why would they want to? Because they were in a southern state, and usually the word pop means something to drink. So they were trying to figure out, why is it that this person was wanting to go see their pop or go see what they were drinking. So they just kept looking at them like with this look. So basically the person had to explain that pop in America has a variation of meanings. Pop could mean something that you do to a balloon, like you pop a balloon. Pop can mean something that you drink. Pop can stand for an endearment term for your father. So you understand? Or like if I pop the question, so it's like we have to definitely take into consideration cultural differences when it comes to words and meanings. So, and different words for the same meaning also causes bypassing problems. So we have to make sure that we are giving them the true meaning of the words that we are saying. And the best way to accomplish that is to ask for feedback so that you can correct bypassing problems. I saw you looking at me like, what are you talking about? So what is it that can help so that you can understand exactly what I'm saying? So those are one of the best things to do to try to prevent bypassing from happening. And the last one that we're going to discuss is sexual harassment. That can definitely be another type of communication obstacle that is found in the workplace. So what is sexual harassment? It is defined as unwelcome sexual advances. Unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature is what constitutes sexual harassment, when this conduct is explicitly or implicitly applied. So, it can definitely have a vast effect on individuals' employment. And it can be unreasonable when it comes to an individual's work performance, or it can be created as an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. And it's by no way, in any way, shape, or form, anything that anyone should have to experience. So how do you handle sexual harassment? Well, definitely you should be aware of what your organization says and defines as sexual harassment. And you should also make sure that you confront the harasser in an assertive manner. No means no. State the behavior, what is wrong, what you expect. Document incidents, report incidents, and weigh consequences for future actions. But definitely you need to make sure that you take care of you. Take care of yourself. Be aware of your surroundings. In the workplace, there are so many different aspects and avenues of so many different things. But one thing for sure is that you have to make sure that you take care of yourself and you don't settle yourself or sell yourself cheaply. Because if sexual harassment is happening to you and being played as a way for you to advance, then you should definitely question it, report it, document it, and make sure that it doesn't happen to you or anyone else. Well, that's all I have for Chapter 6. And let's go over a couple of things so that we can summarize this chapter quickly. So we talked about a lot of things, especially when it comes to communication obstacles that happen. The obstacles can be either by anxiety, technology, and it can also be just something considered as just other communication obstacles. And we discussed all of those. They can create problems for both managers and employees. They can have advantages, very few, but mainly they have disadvantages. And we discussed those. And we need to make sure that in order for us to have successful communication, it definitely is the result of constant effort. Remember what I said at the very beginning. In order for us to improve, we have to definitely practice, 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 and be prepared. So I hope that this chapter has brought you a lot of knowledge, and I hope that you have a great weekend. Remember, by the 24th at 11:59, you should have everything for Unit 2 completed and turned in. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to contact me, and I hope you have a great day. Make sure you take advantage of your attendance and answer your discussion question for today. Goodbye.